On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Nora Ephron, the acclaimed screenwriter, director, and essayist, died on June 26, 2012, at the age of 71 from pneumonia, a complication arising from acute myeloid leukemia, a diagnosis she had kept private from the public for years. Her death was not sudden, but its announcement shocked many, as Ephron had continued to write and engage publicly with her usual wit and energy until her final months. Her passing marked the loss of one of the most influential female voices in American media, particularly in an industry where women were long underrepresented in creative leadership roles. Ephron's death reflected both the personal strength and privacy she embodied, as well as the cultural norms of her generation, where illness was often faced with stoicism and legacy was crafted through work, not public struggle. Unlike celebrity figures who invite the public into their battles with health, Ephron's choice to keep her diagnosis quiet allowed her final years to remain focused on creation rather than pity. In doing so, she continued to reflect the values she championed in her writing: independence, intelligence, and the importance of crafting one's own narrative. The immediate aftermath of her death triggered an outpouring of tributes from across Hollywood and literary circles. Stars, colleagues, and fans alike shared how her sharp, human, and deeply funny work had shaped the romantic comedy genre and redefined modern female protagonists. Films like When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, and Julie and Julia didn't just entertain, they articulated a nuanced vision of womanhood that was both aspirational and grounded in everyday experiences. Ephron's death didn't shift the course of history in a traditional political sense, but it left a cultural vacuum in the world of storytelling. Her legacy has only grown in the years since, with continued recognition of her role in paving the way for future generations of female writers and directors. Her essays remain widely read, studied, and quoted, keeping her voice alive in the collective cultural memory. In reflecting on her passing, we see a portrait of mortality that honors agency and authorship. Ephron taught us that while death is inevitable, the stories we tell about ourselves and others are immortal. Through film, literature, and even the rhythms of everyday conversation she helped shape, Nora Ephron lives on, not as a distant icon, but as a deeply relatable voice whispering truths with humor and heart. Kinky Friedman, the eccentric Texas musician, novelist, and political satirist, passed away on June 26, 2024, at the age of 79, due to complications from Parkinson's disease. Known as much for his biting wit as for his cowboy hat and cigars, Friedman's death marked the end of a uniquely American career that blended art, irreverence, and public service. Though his passing was from natural causes, it quietly closed the chapter on a cultural figure who had spent decades pushing against the boundaries of convention. Friedman's death reflected not just the physical toll of illness, but the fading of a particular kind of countercultural voice that flourished in the late 20th century. A voice unafraid to offend, provoke, or laugh at sacred institutions. In an era increasingly cautious with language and image, Friedman's unapologetic style, both in his music with the satirical band Kinky Friedman and the Texas Jew Boys, and in his mystery novels, stood as a reminder of a different cultural climate, one that embraced rugged individualism and fearless commentary. The immediate consequence of his death was a wave of tributes from musicians, writers, and politicians alike, each highlighting a different facet of his polymathic life. Willie Nelson, a longtime friend, described him as a one-of-a-kind Texan, while many in the literary world reflected on his impact as a Jewish-American voice in Southern storytelling, a blend not often found in mainstream media. His brief but memorable foray into politics, notably his 2006 run for Texas governor, now reads as both a serious challenge to the establishment and a parody of political spectacle. Friedman's legend has arguably been amplified by his death. Freed from the burden of explanation, his contradictions, serious novelist and jokester, political cynic and civic idealist, become part of a more enduring myth. Like Mark Twain or Hunter S. Thompson, Kinky Friedman used satire to expose uncomfortable truths about American life, and in doing so, became larger than life himself. His memory endures not through marble statues, but through well-worn pages and replayed vinyl, through wry one-liners and dusty campaign buttons that read, "Why the hell not?" In remembering Kinky Friedman, we confront the uncomfortable truth that mortality does not tame rebellious spirits, it immortalizes them. Through literature, music, and memory, we keep them alive, laughing with us still. Liz Clayborne, a pioneering force in American fashion, passed away on June 26, 2007, at the age of 78 due to complications from cancer. Her death marked the end of a remarkable journey, not just of a designer, but of a trailblazing businesswoman who transformed how working women dressed and saw themselves. Clayborne's passing was from natural causes, yet symbolically, it closed a chapter in the fashion world that had prioritized accessibility, functionality, and empowerment during a transformative period for women in the workforce. In the 1970s and 1980s, Liz Clayborne Inc. was revolutionary. At a time when corporate America was still heavily male-dominated, Clayborne designed stylish mix-and-match clothing specifically for professional women. Her designs weren't just about aesthetics, they were about utility and identity. Clayborne understood the needs of the modern woman and gave her wardrobe a voice in boardrooms and offices nationwide. Her death came at a time when fast fashion and digital retail were starting to shift the industry, making her legacy of quality, confidence-driven attire feel even more poignant. The immediate aftermath of her death brought forth widespread appreciation, not only from the fashion world, but from business communities as well. Clayborne was the first woman to found a Fortune 500 company bearing her name, a feat that spoke volumes about both her talent and resilience in a space that was not always welcoming to women. Her passing led many to revisit her contributions through retrospectives, brand tributes, and museum exhibitions celebrating her impact. While her death did not cause a seismic shift in history, it did amplify her legend. In an era that now increasingly revisits the stories of women who helped break professional glass ceilings, Liz Clayborne's name continues to surface as an emblem of feminine ambition meeting practical creativity. The very ethos of her brand, function, freedom, and form, remains relevant in ongoing conversations about equity in the workplace. Her legacy endures through more than fashion. It's carried in the broader cultural embrace of women's leadership and self-expression. Commemorated in industry awards and remembered in retrospectives of iconic American designers, Clayborne is immortalized not with grandeur, but with the quiet dignity her brand embodied. Her death reminds us that power, when coupled with purpose, can shape both style and society, and that memory, like fashion, is always being tailored anew. Dolores Gray, the luminous Broadway and film actress renowned for her powerful voice and magnetic stage presence, passed away on June 26, 2002, at the age of 78. Her death, due to a heart attack, marked the quiet conclusion of a life that had once dazzled on the world's most glamorous stages. Natural and peaceful, her passing stood in poignant contrast to the glittering, larger-than-life performances that defined her public persona. Gray rose to fame during a golden era of American theater, one deeply intertwined with post-war optimism, expanding roles for women, and the golden age of musicals. Winning a Tony Award in 1954 for Carnival in Flanders, a production that famously ran for only 6 performances, she remains the only person ever to receive Broadway's highest honor for such a short-lived show. This singular moment reflects both the high regard for her talent and the unpredictable nature of theatrical success during that time. Her passing in the early 2000s came during a period when many of Broadway's old guard were being rediscovered or reevaluated by new generations. Though she had faded from the spotlight in later decades, her death sparked renewed interest in the vibrant, often overlooked women who carried mid-century musical theater on their shoulders. Gray's life and passing encapsulated the tension between fleeting fame and lasting impact, a challenge deeply familiar to performers of her era. While her death did not alter the course of history, it quietly amplified her legacy. Retrospectives highlighted her distinctive contralto, her charisma, and her place in a time when show tunes ruled the airwaves and theater stars could achieve cinematic fame. Tributes from fans and colleagues painted her as a woman of both immense talent and humility, qualities that resonated deeply in a new millennium increasingly obsessed with celebrity culture. In remembering Dolores Gray, we see how memory and mortality entwine. Artists like her live on not only through archived performances and cast recordings, but through the collective memory of the eras they helped define. Her legacy is preserved in grainy footage, nostalgic reviews, and the reverence of theater historians who ensure the spotlight never entirely fades. Through performance, she touched something eternal, proving once more that while the stage may darken, the echo of a truly great voice never truly goes silent. Johnny Solinger, the former lead vocalist of the iconic rock band Skid Row, passed away on June 26, 2021 at the age of 55 due to liver failure. His death, though natural, occurred after a public battle with liver disease, which he disclosed just weeks prior via social media. It was a modern reminder of how fragile even the loudest lives can become, marked not by a dramatic end on stage, but by the quiet struggle behind hospital walls. Solinger's passing reflected a significant cultural shift in how rock stars are perceived and supported. In contrast to the legendary, often glorified, live fast, die young mythology surrounding many rock musicians of earlier decades, Solinger's battle was sober, public, and underscored by a plea for help. His condition, worsened by mounting medical costs, revealed the often precarious reality faced by aging musicians who fall outside the mainstream spotlight. In an era where streaming services have drastically reduced artists' incomes, his death spotlighted the economic vulnerability many performers face, despite once having massive followings. Johnny Solinger joined Skid Row in 1999, succeeding original frontman Sebastian Bach. While he never achieved the same commercial success as his predecessor, Solinger remained with the band for over 15 years, longer than Bach himself. He fronted them through a new generation of fans and helped redefine the band's identity in the post-hair metal era. His departure in 2015 and subsequent solo career in country rock illustrated his versatility, though it also marked the beginning of his gradual retreat from national prominence. The consequences of his death were not seismic in the historical sense, but among the rock and metal community, it revived conversations about legacy, authenticity, and the nature of success in an industry that often moves on quickly. Tributes poured in from fans and peers alike, praising his humility and dedication to his craft. Johnny Solinger's death reminds us that while fame may be fleeting, influence often lies in the connections forged with fans, colleagues, and a subculture that remembers more than just the biggest hits. We honor figures like him not just through headlines but through the preservation of their voice in recordings, the sharing of concert memories, and continued recognition in the lineage of a band that shaped a generation. In this way, his echo lives on, louder than silence, if only to those who choose to listen. Taran Power, the daughter of Hollywood legends Taran Power and Linda Christian, passed away on June 26, 2020, at the age of 66 due to leukemia. Her death was natural, the culmination of a battle with cancer that she faced away from the public spotlight. In contrast to the dramatic lives and careers of her parents, icons of the golden age of Hollywood, Taran's passing was quiet, marked by the affection of family and those who remembered her for her own distinct contributions to film and literature. Her death did not make global headlines or alter the course of Hollywood history, but it did close a chapter on one of the silver screen's most famous dynasties. As a second-generation celebrity who chose a more reserved path, Taran's life and death reflected the shifting cultural expectations for women in the entertainment industry. During the 1970s and early 1980s, when she appeared in films such as Maria and Sinbad and The Eye of the Tiger, there was increasing pressure for actresses to forge independent identities beyond their family legacies. Taran's career, though relatively short-lived, was emblematic of that transitional era in Hollywood, caught between the glamour of old Hollywood and the emerging desire for authenticity and individuality. The immediate aftermath of her death was felt most deeply among her family, fans of her father, and classic film circles. While she may not have reached the fame of her parents, her legacy is woven into the broader cultural tapestry they helped create. Her children and biographers have helped preserve her memory, often highlighting her intelligence, spirituality, and desire to live a life grounded in meaning rather than fame. Taran Power's death prompts reflection on how we remember those who live in the shadow of giants. Mortality for her was not a spectacle, but a personal chapter in a storied lineage. Yet even in quiet departures, there is resonance. We remember her through the lens of continuity, the daughter of legends who carved her own path, however understated. In commemorating such figures, we honor not just their careers, but their humanity. Whether through archived interviews, family tributes, or the continued appreciation of the films she touched, Taran Power remains a gentle thread in the grand fabric of cinematic memory. Edith Fellows, once a shining child star of 1930s Hollywood, passed away on June 26, 2011, at the age of 88 from natural causes. Her death, while quiet and devoid of the headlines that once followed her youthful rise to fame, marked the close of a poignant chapter in the story of classic American cinema. Fellows' passing was a reminder of the fleeting nature of early Hollywood fame and the resilience required to navigate a system that often consumed its youngest talents. As a child actress, Fellows captivated audiences with her emotional range and vulnerability, especially in films like Pennies from Heaven, 1936, opposite Bing Crosby. Yet behind her success was a turbulent personal story, abandoned by her mother, raised by a domineering grandmother, and thrust into the industry at a young age. Her life reflected the broader struggles of child stars during the Golden Age, where the allure of fame was often entwined with exploitation and personal sacrifice. In that sense, her death symbolized the closing of an era in which young actors were seen more as commodities than children. The immediate consequences of her death were not widely felt in mainstream culture, but within film history circles, her story prompted renewed reflection on the evolution of child stardom. In later years, Fellows spoke candidly about her battles with depression and addiction, giving voice to the emotional toll of early fame, conversations that would gain broader cultural attention in subsequent decades as society became more attuned to mental health issues in entertainment. Her death did not shift the trajectory of history, but it deepened the appreciation for those whose brilliance briefly illuminated the screen before fading into obscurity. It also underscored the importance of remembering Hollywood not just through its legends, but also through its survivors, those who bore witness to both the glamour and the cost of early fame. In remembering Edith Fellows, we engage with larger questions about memory and the way art preserves fleeting moments. Though she vanished from the screen for many years, her early performances remain preserved in black and white celluloid, evoking a lost world of innocence, talent, and quiet tragedy. We immortalize such figures not only through retrospectives and restored films, but by listening to their stories, acknowledging both the brilliance and the burden of the spotlight.